Britt, I'm really excited to talk to you this morning. It is 8:30 a.m. as of recording time. We got our coffee. We're ready to go. How are you?
I am wonderful. How about yourself? Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. We are talking today in advance of World Storytelling Day on March 20th, and I really want to get into your company, Once Upon a PJ, and how parents can get the most bang for their child's literacy buck, so to speak, with regard to story time. For most of us, we're doing story time every single night. So, how can we really make story time enjoyable, beneficial for both parent and child? Tell us who you are, what you do, and why you were prompted to start Once Upon a PJ.
Absolutely. So, I am Britt. I am the co founder and CEO of Once Upon a PJ. Who is not on the call, but very important to me are my co founders, Sarah Rosenberg, who is a co founder and chief product officer, and Rachel Woods Oshiro, who is our chief creative officer. But the three of us make up Once Upon a PJ. Once Upon a PJ, we like to say, is actually a storytelling company. If you look at what we sell, we are an e-commerce company that sells kids PJs that have stories on them. But really, we consider ourselves a storytelling company. And our entire mission is to be able to help parents engage with their kids and tell better stories and just make the art of storytelling much more accessible. I think us as humans, we stories are innate to us, but storytelling can be really challenging. And it can feel, especially for parents with limited time, limited brain resources, especially in the challenges of the pandemic, to be able to make story time accessible. It seems that books are the best way to do that. But research shows, and a lot of what we've learned is just the ability to ad hoc tell stories with your children, engage them, make them the hero of the story, use story time to tell lessons that are important to you. That is really what's most impactful. And so that's what we're trying to build with Once Upon a PJ.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, usually story time, storytelling starts with a book, but Once Upon a PJ argues that you can tell a great story based on the pictures on your pajamas. So tell us a little bit more about what Once Upon a PJ sells, but also tell us why, in your capacity as a mother, or where, I should say, where in your capacity as a mother, books fell short.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, books, especially for early literacy, they are everything. So I don't think in any way at OUPJ we are attempting to replace books. There's certainly a place for it. What I found, and really where the idea of Once Upon a PJ came from, was, as great ideas do, not a specific moment, but a culmination of lots of little moments that led to this moment that said, I should tell somebody else about what this thing is, and maybe it would be important to other people. Especially in the pandemic, I struggled to find that quality time. You're sort of spending all of this time with your kids, but not all of that time is actually quality time. And so the time at the end of the day usually was that key storytelling time. And how, in order to make it wonderful and to maximize it, I found that it was hard because we would be reading these books. They would be great in a lot of ways, but sometimes, especially antiquated stories, come with antiquated language, and the things that my daughter was experiencing during her day was not necessarily putting her into the story. I would watch her sort of fade off and not pay attention and get fidgety, and I myself would fade off and not pay attention and get fidgety. And I thought, this is supposed to be this special time that we're spending together, where I'm teaching her and we're learning together and we're snuggling together, and there's just something missing. It started to feel very sort of repetitive and not so great. The moment that I realized that we could sort of do something about this actually didn't come from a book. It came from watching the 1950s classic Peter Pan. And today, as many people know, Peter Pan, that particular story and version of Peter Pan is really challenging. Disney has since put a disclaimer on the movie before you watch it because of the misappropriations to Native American communities. So most people know it as challenging, but sitting down with my then 3-year-old for a girls' night, while her dad was out for a little bit, making ice cream sundaes, thought it was the best thing for us to be able to engage in together. And while she was listening to the story and I was making sundaes, I started to listen to this conversation that was happening between Peter and Wendy. And Peter said something to the effect of, "You can't do that, Wendy, because you're a girl." And I watched my daughter watch that like it was gospel. And my ears sort of perked up. I was like, oh, okay, well, not sure if this is really what I want her to be listening to, but I'm sure it's fine. And immediately following, her response affirmed his confirmation that girls can't actually do anything. She said, "You're right, Peter, girls can't do anything." I looked at her and I said, "I think we need to turn this off." And so my 3-year-old was sort of like, "What? I love this. There are fairies. This is perfect." And it just got me thinking about stories, this story that was so beloved to me as a child that I thought had these really great lessons in it. I saw that there were problems. There were problems not in the fundamentals of the story, but in the way the story was being told. And I thought that if there was a different way as a parent, I could provide the lessons that I wanted to my child in my own words. That would allow me to engage her in that story and get those morals and lessons, still have that wonderful ice cream sundae quality time together, but not have her hear things that I think are wrong, as a parent, and the things that are morals to our family. And so it just got me thinking of how sometimes books that I read, they were monotonous, and I wanted story time to be so much better than it was. And I thought bedtime is really the best time to engage in that. It's the end of your day. It's really that special moment with your child. So how could we create something that made the entire experience better? And so it was like a teeny light bulb moment of, well, could you actually just take those stories and remove the words, make it engaging for your child to be able to see the pictures on their body, feel a part of them, but have them tell part of the story with you. And that little moment sort of never went away. And talked to my friend Sarah, who, fellow parent, was in she had some experience in fashion. She had just got her MBA, so I know she was really excited about being an entrepreneur herself, but really wasn't sure what she was going to be doing. It was one of those pandemic catch-up phone calls. "Hey, I have this sort of weird idea. Is that something? What do you think about this?" She said, "I've also been experiencing those challenges. Like, story time is really hard for me. I really do want to maximize this very minimal time that we have together. We should do something." And then as great ideas do, they sort of expand, and you realize as you start to develop something, I think, what you're an expert at and where you're not an expert. I knew a little bit about storytelling, but truly I am a startup operator. She was a product person. We needed somebody who was amazing at storytelling. And one of my close friends, Rachel, who literally her wedding, I'll never forget her wedding vows, actually not her vows, the entire wedding was built as a story. So her and her husband, the ceremony, they talked about the place where they first met, and a little bit about the heroes of their own story, which was them, all the way through the moment of getting married. And so I thought, I know the right person to help us understand how to tell better stories. So between the three of us, we sort of had this, we all had our expertise, the areas of expertise, and the ability to, as parents, understand this problem, but bring a better solution to life.
Well, so much of what you said there really hit home for me. So for anybody who doesn't know what Once Upon a PJ sells, just so we're on the same page, that is organic cotton pajamas for children with illustrations essentially all over the pajamas. And so what I love about Once Upon a PJ is that it retains all of the phenomenal aspects of reading a story to your children, like the quality time, like the uh, opportunity to develop literacy, for your children to learn how to value books and stories. But it also does something that books perhaps may not do often, which is it empowers the child, your child, to become the storyteller, become the author. And so I just want to go back to what you were talking about with Peter Pan, because I recently had a similar moment. My 8-year-old, so let me back up. And for listeners, we probably don't know this about me, a little fact about Stephanie is that I, as a child, and still am, but as a child, I was like a huge book nerd lover. I read every single Nancy Drew in second grade. That's how much of a nerd I am. And my daughter's in second grade. And so I was really excited to, you know, love Nancy Drew again with my daughter. I was going to read her. We started at one, the one with the clock, and I was just ready to go. And, I'm reading this. We got a couple chapters in, and I was like, oh my goodness, I do not want to read this to my child. I do not want to impart these lessons on my child. Nancy Drew is really into shopping and fashion. She is essentially her father is this fancy lawyer and she's just his assistant working on the side. Everybody thinks Nancy Drew is this like amazing feminist. That's not how the book is written at all. I mean, she's smart, but that's about it. And so you definitely have a point there when you're talking about how the books of our childhoods, the stories of our childhoods just have not, the stories have not kept up with the changing cultural tides. And so I guess I want to just say that because it's been on my mind for a while, but I'd love to go back to storytelling and World Storytelling Day and ask you, what does research say about the importance of storytelling and having story time with our children? I mean, we all know it's important, but perhaps some of us listening don't know why.
It's sort of starting by actually doing it, right? I think once you actually engage in storytelling with your child, that's when you start to see the effects. And for us, we've spent a lot of time understanding the research around storytelling as its own methodology, not necessarily storytelling as it relates to reading, because again, our goal is not to replace storytelling reading. Especially for ages 2 to 6 or 7, where they're first starting to read, being able to see the words on the page in terms of early literacy is extremely important. So that is certainly not what we're trying to do. But we recognize that based on our research and the research of others, that by engaging in storytelling, you are sort of molding this beautiful little, nuglet into an empathetic adult, who can understand complex ideas, who can, be considerate of others, who can understand that the stories and the things that they believe are not, or might be different than the things that other people believe, and that's okay. And that's what we believe in terms of storytelling, is the fact that your child can read a book with you, listen to the way that a story goes. They're so engaged with the place, the hero of the story, the jam, the thing that happens that causes causes an issue that eventually gets resolved to make the story. But they don't always realize that a story told one way by one person could actually be told a different way by a different person, based on their experience, background, race, gender, expression, all of those good things. So we think it's really important to use storytelling to its maximum benefit, to take the same story and tell it in a lot of different ways. That way, your child not only can understand the story as it's written on the page, but can understand that other people might tell the story in a different way. You as a parent might believe something that's different than the words on the page, and they want to hear that. They want to hear how mommy or daddy or grandma or grandpa would relate to this story as well. So we think that, you can make story time better by not committing to what you see, by recognizing we celebrate at OUPJ all the ways that a story is told. And you can do that by just changing up the story, looking at the pictures and saying, what else could be happening?
I have to be honest, Britt, in my house, I love books. I love stories. I love reading to my children. I'd much rather read to them than sit on the floor and, play. That's completely honest. Maybe I should not say that out loud, but it's true. Like, I love reading to them, but at the end of the day, when, I'm tired and they're cranky, story time can at times feel like a chore. And so, in honor of World Storytelling Day, I wanted to have you on to talk about how can we really truly tweak our practices as parents so that storytelling, story time return to become one of the best things in life. So that's where I really want to get your insight today is, what does research say is best practices when it comes to reading with or to our children?
Yeah, I mean, obviously stories are fundamental to us as humans. There's actually this beautiful study that came out last year that people who are engaged in story time unconsciously synchronize their bodily functions like heartbeat and breathing. So if you're listening to a story with someone or engaging, your heartbeat sync up, your breathing syncs up. And that the beauty of that in being able to connect with your child is just, I mean, something so magical. And I think what we are all attempting to achieve when we're sitting down for this special moment with our with our child, and sometimes where that can fall short. So just being able to have those conversations, just to be able to engage in storytelling with your child, it's biological, it's neurological. There's so much to it that helps just, your child grow. Um, Outside of that, there's also some great research about how to your point before, making your child the hero of the story helps them become more empathetic, but helps them understand the world around them a lot more and relate to things a lot better. Because a lot of what we do with OUPJ outside of just providing a pair of PJs is provide education. It's really hard to do this. It sounds super fun when you first put on the PJs, and then you sort of say, okay, well, where am I supposed to start? So we have a PJ guide that says, okay, well, for kids ages 2 to 4, they are just starting to maintain their attention span over extended periods of time. So your goal as a parent is to help them work on that and get them through the entire arc of a story from the very beginning to the very end. If you can keep working on getting them to be present for that entire story arc, wow, you've helped your kids continue to increase their attention spans at that key age. From ages 5 to 7, that's when they can start to engage in more meaningful conversation. They can express ideas thoughtfully and speak audibly. And obviously every child is completely different, but we had distilled this down specifically from the DRDP, which is a California preschool desired results and developmental profile, essentially like stages by which you should be, or certain children are sort of developmentally going through things, but by 5 to 7, generally they can express thoughts and feelings and ideas. So at that point, you can start to make stories more complex. You can go with some of those if-then statements. Okay, so as you're going through a story with your child, little Joey, said that the monkey in the story is going to pick up the banana. What happens if he picks up the orange? Does something happen after the effect of picking up the orange? All of those things, and the ability to understand kind of the repercussions of actions in a complex way that comes with the later ages. So again, you're sort of reinforcing all of the important things that you hope your child is learning in school and being social with other kids, and being able to just share these impactful moments in your own words, that reinforce the morals that you want your child to experience and have.
Some things we just do intuitively, like we read with fun in our voice, we give different characters different voices, we use pregnant pauses, and exclamations with our annotation, right? And but other things too, like make physical contact with your child when you're reading. You tend to sit next to your child, but research says if you can have some sort of physical touch in addition to the storytelling, that's really powerful. For pre-readers, show them the words, so track with your fingers. I'm wondering, and of course too, read every day. Research says 15 to 20 minutes a day minimum, is the minimum, is number one. So just doing it consistently each and every day. I'm wondering though, for you in your capacity as a parent, do you rely on any research backed best practices when reading to your child?
Again, I feel like we are really trying to see different ways to engage in storytelling outside of reading, because reading to us is very accessible, but it's imperfect. So we actually developed at OUPJ a acronym based on the word pajamas. No surprise, that helps you understand all of the most important parts of a story to tell an arc with your child. I have always found that it's not just at reading time that I want to maximize that time with my child. It's on the way to school. I have a 25-minute commute with my child to drive her to school, and we sometimes listen to music. Sometimes we listen to actual storytellers, but a lot of times I turn off the music and we're just talking. And I have actually used this acronym, PAJAMAS, to remember how to make it through a story and how to make a story most impactful for her. So there are key points in a story that you really want to hit with your child, that will help them not only understand the story, but allow them to really absorb its effects and understand kind of like the key moments within. So as with pajamas, P, it's always starting off with place. You're sort of introducing the world, and the hero of the story. And this is really important. This is where your child hears that their background, their experiences might be different than someone else's. The unicorn might not live in, a suburban oasis. They might live in a city. They might live somewhere else. So your ability to kind of discuss the place of a story and how somebody's place is different than their own helps contextualize that for a child to get started. The second letter is A, sort of adventure begins. So for us, we want to give that moment where a hero's journey, or the person that is sort of the hero of the story has something sparked in them. Journeys can be both literal and figurative. So for us, having that moment where adventure begins is when your child their heartbeat will start to sync with yours, and they will have that moment of, ooh, something is happening right now. Then there's J, jam, which is obviously the sticky situation where there is a problem that needs to be solved. And this is that crucial moment. This was my crucial moment of listening to Peter and Wendy talk on the phone. And I said, ooh, we have a problem. I should think about how to solve this for myself. The next A being sort of answer the challenge. So in order to get out of the jam, generally the hero has to make a choice, and those choices matter. And so being able to talk through with your child the choices that come, or the effects of the choices that are made. You can do this when you're reading a book with your child. You can get to a specific part of how the hero is going through their journey within the story. And instead of just reading what's there, stop and say, well, what do you think? Do you think this is what they should have done? Why do you think they did this? Obviously, there are age-appropriate responses to that. Your 2-year-old might not be able to give you an eloquent answer to that, but you can still, you are your child's, you know your child's best and how to communicate with them. So you can do that in really small but impactful ways to get them to think differently than what's on the page, to make an impact for them. There's only a couple more letters, which is so great that makes this go really quickly, but M is modified. The hero, at the end of making that choice, the person who made that choice is changed. Their point of view is changed. Their place is changed. Something about them is changed that is really impactful. And then A is aftermath. There is a ripple effect in the world or to the other characters in the story as a result of that change. And then our favorite is S, pajamas, to switch it up. Tell the story in a new way. Even though it's said in one way, try to say it in a different way. Let your child tell part of the story. To take a character that might be not in the foreground of the pictures, but sitting in the background. What's their backstory? How are they feeling about what's happening as part of the story? Can you give them a name? Can you give them, something really special to share? That can be a great way to make storytelling much more than the words that you see on the page.
I love that. I love that acronym. I love that help for parents because as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, reading a book can be quite passive for both the listener and the reader. The book is taking over. And, there are benefits and drawbacks to that, of course. But when we take the book away and we're looking at the images, the beautiful images, by the way, on a pair of pajamas, that becomes a much more active storytelling experience. And some parents might be rip roaring, ready to jump on that, but others might be like, wait a minute, I'm not very imaginative. I need some support. So thank you for that. Before we say goodbye, though, I do want to ask you, I noticed that your pajamas are organic cotton. And as a sustainable minimalist, I was really darn thrilled to see that. And so I'm wondering, for anybody listening who doesn't know why organic is important, organic cotton, supports soil health. It's better for our children's health. Do we want pesticides, herbicides, insecticides in our children's clothing on their body for 10 plus hours a night? I could go on a diatribe about conventional cotton, but I just wanted to ask you, why did you and your co-founders make the decision to create organic cotton pajamas?
Absolutely. Sustainability was at the heart of what we were building at OUPJ. We know that organic cotton produces almost 50% less CO2 compared to conventional cotton. So not only the fact that it's touching your children's skin, but that it, everything we are trying to do is be better, not only for people, but also for planet. And I remember the very specific moment where we were talking to our manufacturing partner about all of our different options, organic cotton being the main one that we had wanted. And it was not cheap because it was, really great. And so I expected us to come back as a founding team and have to have a difficult conversation to say, okay, what is most important to us? And unanimously, very easily, we all sort of said, we stand by sustainability as a core tenet of our product. And it might be a little bit more expensive on our end, but we're not going to compromise on that because that is just as important as all of the other aspects of what we're doing. So, we're really excited about that. We've also created this epilogue program. So I have a little bit of a background in learning about sustainability from previous roles, but I specifically cut this part out. I Oh my gosh, what was I just going to say? The end of life of your product matters. And most of the time, you're not thinking about that when you first purchase your product. It's even worse for children's products because it sort of feeds into what fast fashion is, which is you have to move your product very quickly because your child is moving through stages and ages very quickly. So we wanted to make the end of life of our product just as important as the beginning point of purchase. So for us, we wanted to create a program that allowed for people to say, okay, my child has grown up. I want to give this back. I can, without cost, send this back to OUPJ knowing that they will donate this. And the end of one story becomes the beginning of the other. And so at some point, you never have to worry about that purchase not being a sustainable purchase because we intend to continue the life of the product for as long as we can.
I love that. Manufacturers, by and large, I would say, don't think about the end life of their product. They just think about the manufacturing and the selling, and then whatever happens to it, happens to it. Nobody cares because we got our paycheck. And so I just want to thank you publicly for thinking about the afterlife or the end life of a product when your families no longer need this item because your children got too big. Tell us where we can find Once Upon a PJ, but more specifically, tell us about your launch. I know you haven't even launched yet.
Yes, we are pre-launch. You can't even buy the PJs yet, but we're so excited because after literally years of dealing with supply chain issues and finding the right illustrator and getting all this stuff together, we're here, we're close. So we've decided to launch on World Storytelling Day, again to affirm our commitment to storytelling and the importance of storytelling and wanting to be a leader for children and parents and the world in this art form to make it more accessible. So we are an e-commerce company, so you can find us at onceuponapj.com. We also have an Instagram page that's just getting started, so we hope to continue to put there things that are valuable to parents, things like ways to engage in storytelling, whether it's an acronym or a piece of research that we've learned that we can share with you, or just learnings from our community. A lot of what we've posted so far have been from the customer interviews we did and learning about the things that were important to parents for during storytelling, or just with making sustainable purchases. You'll find some of that there too. So we hope we can always be a resource and a guide during this process. Whether you decide that buying the PJs are right for you, or you want to follow along and learn how to be a better storyteller and just help your child do the same. We celebrate all the ways that a story can be told and all the ways you may engage with us too. So thank you in advance for checking us out.
Well, Britt, I must say my niece is turning 5 soon and she is getting a pair of your PJs. So I'm really excited.
So honored. Well, thank you so much. This was such a joy. We're really, really excited to be part of everything you do. So thank you again.
And thank you for coming on. This was a great conversation and it really reaffirmed to me that storytelling, is one of those great and free and best parts of life. So, best parts of parenting for sure. So, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.